The hotel room is drenched in dim, golden light, luxurious, hushed, expensive. The silence buzzes in Ariel Johnson's ears, still humming with echoes of flashbulbs and cheers. Her hands tremble as she stands before the ornate mirror, fingers curled around the jeweled Miss Universe crown, the metal biting into her palm. Slowly, she lifts it from her head, breath shallow, eyes locked on her reflection. Mascara smudges the corners of her eyes, a soft sheen of sweat on her brow. But the look in her eyes is steady, haunted, distant. She places the crown on the velvet-lined table with care, like it might shatter. Her phone buzzes. She almost doesn't check it, but habit wins. A direct message glows on the screen. Still a black monkey with a crown. Her breath catches. The room stills further, like the world's holding its breath with her. She doesn't cry, doesn't flinch, just stares, hollow, as if she already knew, and then cut. Flashback, a dingy school bathroom. Flickering fluorescent lights, casting ghostly shadows. 80-year-old Ariel hunches over a chipped sink, her small hands red and raw as they scrub lemon juice and baking soda against her dark skin. The air reeks of acid and shame. Tears mix with the makeshift bleach, dripping silently. They said I'm dirty, she whispers to no one, just the cracked mirror and the girl inside it. Her voice so small it almost disappears. Back to present, Ariel sinks into the armchair beside the window, phone still in her lap, screen black now. Her reflection stares back in the darkened glass, this time not just Miss Universe, but every version of herself layered underneath. She runs a hand over her braided crown, breathes deep, and finally lets her eyes close. Her voice comes in, low, almost a whisper, but carrying weight like an ancestral drumbeat. They tried to make me hate myself, she says. A pause, her voice growing stronger, the kind that's lived 1,000 lifetimes in one body. But let me tell you how I survived, ... and how I rose. Ariel Johnson was born on a sticky July morning in rural Georgia, the first and only child of Njosi, a proud, dark-skinned Nigerian immigrant, and Daryl, her light-skinned African-American husband whose charm faded fast under the weight of real life. By the time Ariel turned 6, Daryl was gone first emotionally, then physically, leaving behind only a stack of promises and a scent of Old Spice that lingered for weeks. Ngozi didn't cry. She packed up what little they had and moved them to a quieter suburb on the edge of town, a predominantly white neighborhood where she believed Ariel might have a better shot at life. It was a hopeful act, but in hindsight, naive. From day one, Ariel learned what it meant to be other. Her curls were too tight, her skin too dark, her name too strange for a place that valued sameness masked as civility. At school, she became a target, tar baby, monkey, burnt toast. The names stuck to her like shadows. Some came from classmates, whispered behind cupped hands, or shouted in hallways. Others came with a smile from teachers who questioned if she even belonged in the gifted program, or asked, "Do you understand me?" Like English wasn't her first language. Jessica, her next-door neighbor and closest friend, was Ariel's escape at first. They'd jump on trampolines, play dress-up, trade secrets. But friendship, too, had limits in this world. After being teased for sitting with Ariel at lunch, Jessica began to pull away first, subtly, then sharply. Invitations stopped. Laughter faded. One day, Jessica walked past Ariel like she was invisible, and something inside her cracked. Alone became Ariel's normal. At home, things weren't much softer. Ngozi was iron-willed and exhausted, a nurse who worked double shifts and came home with feet too swollen to stand and eyes too tired to see. She cooked with precision, kept the house spotless, and loved her daughter fiercely but from a distance. Warmth was not something Ngozi knew how to offer easily. She'd lived through war, racism, and the slow erosion of dreams in a foreign land. She expected Ariel to be strong because life would never allow her to be soft. "Don't let them break you," she'd say, with a clipped accent and eyes that never met hers. But Ariel was already bending, folding herself smaller with each passing day. In secret, she found her refuge. Late at night, while her mother dozed off to reruns of Jeopardy, with a heating pad on her back, Ariel would tiptoe to the living room, turn the TV volume low, and watch beauty pageants with a reverence bordering on spiritual. There was something about the way those women moved, graceful, luminous, applauded. They stood on stages, under glittering lights, and were seen, not just noticed, celebrated. Ariel would mimic their walks in the hallway mirror, an old bedsheet wrapped around her like a gown, her feet wobbling in her mum's worn heels. She'd smile through the pain, pretending each jeer from school was applause, each whispered insult a cheer. It wasn't just about the crown, it was about worth. It was about being seen as beautiful in a world that taught her she was anything but. In that mirror, in those moments, she wasn't the black girl who sat alone at lunch, or the child who scrubbed her skin raw, trying to change it. She was a queen, if only for a moment. As she got older, that mirror dream didn't fade. It calcified into ambition. Ariel learned how to pose, how to speak, how to hide her hurt behind poise. She studied past winners, like gospel, learning what made them sparkle, not just in looks, but in story. Still, the world didn't bend for girls like her. Every step forward came with whispers behind her back, judges who looked past her pageant, mums who side-eyed her backstage. But Ariel kept showing up, because deep down, beneath the bruises and the silence and the crown of other people's hate, something refused to die. A voice small, steady whispered, "You are more." And maybe that voice was her own. Or maybe it was the dream speaking back. At 14, Ariel was still clinging to the fragile scaffolding of her dream, delicate as glass, but growing stronger with every secret practice session in front of her mirror. So when a group of popular girls at school, blonde, confident, always laughing a little too loud, approached her with unexpected smiles and said a local modeling scout was coming to campus, her heart leaped before her brain could catch up. "There, looking for fresh faces," they said. "You have the look, exotic, unique. Just come to the auditorium after school. Dress up, they want to see you in your element." Ariel barely breathed the whole day. After final period, she slipped into a bathroom stall and changed into her best outfit, borrowed heels, a thrifted blouse she'd ironed 3 times, lip gloss applied with trembling hands. She even curled her lashes. Her stomach fluttered with hope as she walked toward the auditorium, spine straight, trying to carry herself like the women she admired on TV. But as soon as she opened the doors, laughter detonated around her like a bomb. Dozens of students were gathered, phones raised, some pretending to interview her, others barking fake instructions. "Turn around, slower, show us your runway walk." One boy dropped to his knees, in mock admiration, clapping wildly. The ringleader, one of the girls who'd invited her, laughed so hard she cried, filming the whole scene as Ariel stood frozen. She realized, slowly, this wasn't a casting, it was a setup, a trap. Her cheeks burned as the giggles turned into roars, as someone threw a wad of paper at her hair. She didn't run. She walked away, heels clicking too loudly on the tile, trying not to let the tears fall until she was out of sight. But by the time she got home, the damage was done. The video was already online, captioned, "America's Next Top Tragedy." Comments flooded in like knives. She really thought she had a chance. Monkey see, monkey strut. Emoji, laughing face. Banana.arielle. Came home late, her face stripped of makeup, her body vibrating with shame. She tried to sneak past her mother, but Njozi was waiting in the living room, arms folded, eyes stormy. The video had made its way to her, too, shared by a co-worker, whispered about in the hospital corridors. "So you want to be a model?" Ngozi snapped, standing. "Is this what you think your life is?" Ariel opened her mouth to explain, to plead, but Ngozi didn't want the truth. She wanted control. Her hand flew before Ariel could move, a sharp slap that rang louder than the laughter had. "Who told you you were meant for the spotlight?" she shouted, her voice trembling with something deeper than anger. "Keep your head down. They will never love you, Ariel. Never. You think you're special. You are black. You are a girl. You are alone in a world that wants you dead or invisible." Her words landed like stones. Ariel didn't cry, not in front of her. She just turned and walked to her room, closed the door quietly, and didn't come out for 3 days. In that small, dim room, something shifted. She lay under the covers at first, phone off, curtains drawn, but somewhere around day 2, the humiliation hardened into something else. Resolve. She opened her laptop and began searching. How to walk like a model, how to improve posture, skincare routines for dark skin, nutrition for glowing skin, how to speak confidently in interviews. She watched YouTube videos with pen in hand, took notes like it was gospel. She studied women who looked like her, flawed, beautiful, fierce. She pinned photos of Lupita Nyong'o, Naomi Campbell, even lesser-known dark-skinned models who had clawed their way into the spotlight. And then she took out her old journal and wrote across an empty page in bold, angry ink, "I will become so radiant they'll need sunglasses to look at me." It wasn't a dream anymore. It was a mission. Not for validation, not even for revenge, but to reclaim herself, to make them see, to make herself believe. High school became Ariel's forge. After the humiliation of the fake casting, something inside her hardened not into bitterness, but into an unshakable drive. She started waking at 5 a.m. to stretch, to study her walk in the full-length mirror she'd salvaged from a neighbor's curb. She swapped chips for almonds, soda for water, processed hair for deep conditioning routines and protective styles. Her skin began to glow from any product, but from consistency, from self-love, stitched together day by day. She moved differently, carried herself taller, even when the whispers in the hallway didn't stop. The insults didn't vanish, they just slid off her like water on polished stone. She entered small local pageants with the same quiet intensity she'd once brought to her mirror routines. And every time, she walked on stage with perfect poise, only to hear the same comments afterward. "She's pretty, but too ethnic, maybe with straighter hair. She doesn't have the traditional pageant look." Each rejection carved into her with surgical precision. But she kept showing up, not to please them, but to prove to herself she belonged on that stage. At 17, after yet another near-win turned bitter loss, Ariel met Celeste Monroe, former pageant queen with perfectly capped teeth, honey blonde hair, and an iron will wrapped in silk. Celeste ran a coaching business for aspiring contestants, and she saw something in Ariel. "You've got the walk, the fire. But baby," she said, eyeing her skin with practiced detachment, "they won't crown you like this. You want to win or not." Celeste didn't mince words. She recommended skin lighteners, colored contact lenses, and wigs that blended into a safer, more commercial beauty. "It's not about who you are," she said once, flipping through Ariel's photos with a critical eye. "It's about who they're comfortable seeing." Ariel hesitated. Her instinct screamed no, but the dream had a voice, too, and it whispered, "Maybe this is the way." She caved, quietly at first, a little lightener at night, a lace front wig for competitions, makeup several shades to light. The transformation worked. She won 2 local titles in quick succession. The judges smiled wider. She was invited to speak at fundraisers, take photos with sponsors. On the outside, it looked like triumph, but inside, Ariel was unraveling. Every time she scrubbed her face raw to apply the bleaching cream, she felt like she was scraping away not just melanin, but meaning. She stopped journaling. Her smile turned mechanical. Her reflection became unrecognizable. Stranger with a crown. Then came the night she cracked. She was sitting on the bathroom floor, jar of skin, lightener in hand, rubbing it onto her arms in circular motions. The smell sharp, acidically clung to her nostrils. Her skin stung, and for the first time, she looked down at her own hands and didn't feel proud. She felt grief. The sob came without warning, guttural and deep, as if years of buried shame had clawed their way out all at once. She pressed her fists to her mouth, trying to muffle the sound, but the door creaked open anyway. And Josie stood there in her nightgown, silent for a long moment as her eyes took in the jar, the raw skin, the pain in her daughter's face. She didn't raise her voice. She walked in, sat beside her on the floor, and lifted her own sleeve. What Ariel saw silenced her more than any slap ever could. Faint, faded scars along her mother's forearm, the uneven patches of skin, long hidden. And Josie spoke quietly, her voice weighted with old sorrow. "I did this to myself, too," she said. "Back when I first came to America, I thought if I looked less African, I would be respected. I believed the lie." She turned to Ariel, eyes shining not with judgment, but a grief so familiar it split Ariel open. "Don't erase yourself for their approval. They don't define your worth." For the first time, mother and daughter sat in shared vulnerability, not as warrior and child, but as women bruised by the same war. The next morning, Ariel threw out the bleach. Every bottle, every cream. She took off the wig, washed her face, and let her curls breathe in the sunlight. It wasn't an easy decision. Sponsors stopped calling. Bookings dried up. Celeste, furious, accused her of throwing it all away. But, for the first time, Ariel didn't flinch. She had gained something more valuable than bookings: herself, her truth, her voice. That voice found a new home online. Ariel launched Melanin Rising, a digital platform dedicated to uplifting dark-skinned girls. She shared her story, posted raw before and after photos, created videos about colorism and confidence. Her honesty resonated. Messages poured in from girls across the country and then the world. "Thank you for being visible. You make me feel beautiful. I thought I was alone." Ariel was still chasing the crown, yes, but on her own terms. No bleach, no masks, no apologies. For the first time, the spotlight didn't feel like a burden. It felt like hers. At 22, Ariel stood on the cusp of everything she had fought for. Her name officially listed among the finalists for Miss Georgia. It felt like a full-circle moment, the culmination of years clawing her way through rejection, erasure, and internal war. But the universe wasn't done testing her. On the first day of rehearsals, Ariel saw her Jessica, former best friend, the girl who once giggled with her under the trampoline, who later walked past her like a ghost. But this Jessica was unrecognizable, light-skinned from years of bleaching. Nose sculpted to perfection, hair bone straight and platinum. She moved like she'd been bred for the crown, flawless, poised, and dripping in curated charm. Whispers buzzed around her like bees. She was the favorite, backed by elite sponsors, already booked for commercials. And Ariel soon learned, coached by none other than Celeste Monroe. Celeste barely blinked when she saw Ariel backstage. She simply leaned in, her voice soft but sharp. "You don't fit the mold. Play the game or go home. This world doesn't want your version of real." Ariel clenched her fists but stayed silent. She knew the game. She'd played it before and lost pieces of herself every time. But this time felt different. This time, she wasn't chasing validation. She was standing in her truth, and it had made her dangerous. Still, the pressure mounted. Subtle sabotage began within days. During the official photo shoot, Ariel's lighting was mysteriously harsh, casting shadows, flattening her features. Her makeup was tampered with once, her dress zipper mysteriously jammed minutes before she walked. She overheard other contestants whispering about a temper problem she didn't have, about being difficult with stylists. It all reeked of something calculated. Then came the final blow, an anonymous email from a sympathetic volunteer containing screenshots. Texts between Jessica's team and a pageant official. The texts outlined bribes, suggestions to score Ariel low in interviews, and even a rumor planted online about her being ungrateful and aggressive. The messages were clear. They were determined to bury her before she ever reached the stage. For a moment, Ariel felt the old Pelther temptation to scream, to quit, to retreat into silence. But then she looked at herself in the mirror, not the made-up, pageant-perfect image, but the woman who had risen from humiliation, from bleach-stained nights, from a mother's hardened silence and eventual grace. And she remembered what this was all for. That night, instead of rehearsing, Ariel sat in her hotel room, turned on her ring light, and hit go live on Melanin Rising. What followed was not a polished statement, was raw, trembling, and devastatingly honest. She spoke about the racism she'd endured since childhood, the silent toll of collegism, the grooming by a system that only made space for one kind of beauty. She named no names, but exposed the blueprint, how the industry rewarded erasure and punished authenticity, how sabotage and bribery were woven into the culture of winning. She held up the bleach creams she used to hide, showed her old wigs, her journal entries written in pain. If I have to burn this stage down to build something real, then so be it, she said, her voice cracking. But I won't disappear for anyone. The video exploded. Overnight, it hit millions of views. Celebrities reposted it. Activists called her brave. Brands that once ignored her reached out, hungry now for the authenticity she'd refused to sell. Meanwhile, Jessica's sponsors began to quietly distance themselves. The leaked texts surfaced online, and while Jessica denied involvement, the public backlash was swift and fierce. The pageant board launched an investigation but couldn't act fast enough to contain the shift already underway. The audience had chosen its queen. On the night of the final competition, the energy in the auditorium was electric. Ariel walked the stage in a deep bronze gown that shimmered like the sun on melanin. Her hair was natural, pulled into a crown of curls. Her voice during the Q&A was measured, fierce, and full of lived truth. And when they announced her name, Marielle Johnson, Miss Georgette, didn't feel like a trophy. It felt like vindication, like revolution. The crowd erupted, not just in applause, but in relief, in recognition. Ariel had not bent, and still she had one dot in the days that followed. Her inbox flooded speaking invitations, brand deals, messages from young black girls saying thank you. Sponsors no longer wanted the polished, colorless ideal. They wanted her. Her platform, Melanin Rising, tripled in followers. Ariel had done the impossible not just by claiming a crown, but by refusing to trade herself for it. And in doing so, she changed the rules. Ariel entered the Miss Universe competition as the underdog, the one no one expected to go for at least not by traditional standards. But she had long stopped measuring herself by anyone else's ruler. While other contestants arrived with sleek silhouettes and pressed hair, Ariel stepped into the international spotlight with her natural afro standing tall, a halo of defiance and beauty. Her presence wasn't just striking, it was disruptive in the most necessary way. She didn't hide behind rehearsed perfection. She brought her full, complex truth to the world stage. When she spoke, people listened not just to her eloquence, but to her honesty. In interviews, she talked about colorism not as a distant issue, but as a global epidemic, how girls from Jamaica to India to Brazil were taught to hate their reflections before they even understood their worth. Beauty, she said, should never be a weapon used against ourselves. Her words made headlines, but more importantly, they made waves. In the final week leading up to the competition, as contestants were sequestered into rehearsal chaos, Ariel received a visitor who had never once attended a pageant before Ngozi. She arrived in a bold, Lego-style wrapper, gel-tied high and proud, her presence filling the room like an answered prayer. For years, they had circled each other, in silence, wounded by generational scars, and spoken through hard love. But now, something softer passed between them. A look, a nod, a peace that didn't need to be explained. Ngozi stood before her daughter, eyes moist but unblinking. "You look like our ancestors dreamed you," she whispered, placing her hands on Ariel's shoulders. Strong, whole, unapologetic. It was the blessing Ariel never knew she needed. And in that moment, the crown didn't matter. She had already come home to herself. On the final night, as the stage pulsed with lights and flags from every continent waved in the crowd, Ariel stood among the top 5 finalists, nerves coiled tightly but her spine unbowed. Then came the final question. What is the most important lesson you've learnt in life? The auditorium went still. She took a breath, her voice steady as it carried into the silence. That self-hate is learned, but so is love. I grew up believing I had to erase myself to be worthy, but I realized I could choose something else. I chose to love myself, and now I help others do the same. A hush followed, then applause, then thunder. When her name was announced, Ariel Johnson, Miss Universe, the crowd erupted. Cameras flashed, people cried, and the crown that once felt like a far-off fantasy now rested on her natural curls. A final rebellion against everything. The world told her she wasn't, but the real victory wasn't the crown, it was the revolution it sparked. Girls from every corner of the globe saw her and saw themselves. Not a symbol of perfection, but a mirror of possibility. Ariel didn't just win a title, she won her freedom, and she used it to light a path for others to follow. Years later, Ariel returned to the place where her war with herself began, her old elementary school in rural Georgia. The hallways felt smaller, the walls duller than she remembered, but the memories still echoed with cruel laughter and stifled tears. She walked slowly, almost reverently, until she reached the girls' bathroom. The same stall, third from the end. Her fingers grazed the edge of the door, remembering the sting of lemon, the grit of baking soda, the shame that clung to her like a second skin. But now, carved into the once blank surface in bold, looping letters, was a different kind of message. Your melanin is magic. She stood there for a long moment, tears pricking her eyes, not from pain, but from the healing that had finally bloomed in its place. Her voice broke through in a soft, steady voiceover. They told me I was too dark, too much, that I'd never be enough. But light isn't skin deep. It's something you carry, even when no one sees it. I didn't change for the world. I made the world change for me. As her words lingered, the screen shifted to a final image. A group of young girls huddled together in a living room, eyes wide as they watched Ariel's Miss Universe speech on a phone screen. Their skin shades varied: amber, deep brown, honey, rose gold, but their faces all held the same awe. One little girl, no older than 8, leaned in and whispered with a smile that lit up the room, "She looks like me." And just like that, the screen faded to black, quiet, powerful, whole.